about $95,000 in student loan debt. I have a bun in the back of my head, so I'm not bald-headed, y'all. Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's episode is a little bit different, but I wanted to introduce the series on my channel just talking about financial wellness. As you all know, I have a brand called Alive and Well, and a part of that brand is just like holistic health. And one aspect that's really important to me is financial health. I took an interest in finances, I think after I graduated from undergrad, realizing that I wanted to make a lot of changes in how I saw my finances. So once I was able to get a steady income, I was able to actually make the changes that I was looking to make. But this story specifically, I want to talk about how I paid off all of my credit card debt, and I am free from consumer debt. The only consumer debt I had at this before were my credit cards. At this point, I don't have credit cards. Well, I have credit cards, but it's more so now I can keep up with paying off the total amount every single month, which was my goal. Prior to that, I wasn't able to do things like that because I kind of acquired a lot of debt on my credit card that I wasn't able to manage. And this is just my story of how I acquired the debt in the first place and how I'm paying it off and how I'm actually starting this financial wellness journey, really just to get financially well and financially whole. I have a bun in the back of my head, so I'm not bald-headed, y'all. Okay, so let's start this story off with my first credit card. My first credit card ever was the Barclays card. If you are an old school like Apple product person, you know that before they had the Apple credit card, they had Barclays. And Barclays was how you would buy a lot of your products. I was in undergrad, I came into school with like an HP or something like that, and seeing everybody with these MacBooks, my roommates had MacBooks, and I was just like, I need this MacBook in my life. You know, I didn't make, again, back then I wasn't making like the best financial decisions. So I was at my student job, I applied for the Barclays card, and I was given the Barclays card. That was really, I didn't have any credit before that. So they gave me a credit of $2,000, a limit of $2,000, and I was like, perfect. I know my MacBook is gonna be less than that, so I'm good to go. One thing that I really messed up while purchasing this MacBook is that the Barclays card was like 18 months, no interest, as long as you pay for or you get your MacBook from an Apple store. I was under the impression that the technology store on campus was an Apple store. I don't know why. So I bought my MacBook from my campus store, not really going to an Apple store. So that means that I kind of lost that incentive that the card came with about spending the money at an Apple store, having like less interest and things like that. But at that age, I honestly was just not concerned with that. So I never missed a payment. And even when I'm telling all of this, I never missed a payment on any of my credit cards. The minimum payment for the Barclays card at that time, I believe, was $50. I was able to maintain it. My goal was eventually, if I was to qualify for getting more grants or more financial aid, I would just throw the money on the card and I would pay it off, which is what eventually happened. But when I got that credit card, after paying it down like a couple of times, because this was like maybe my sophomore year in undergrad, when I needed to get my hair done, I was taking cash advances on the credit card. I was putting everything on the credit card. When I didn't have an income, that's what I would be using. You know, if I needed gas, I would use my Barclays card. I didn't have a good perspective on credit and how it's supposed to be used. So later on, as I was continuing on, I took like a finance class, I believe. And when I took that finance class, the finance class actually showed me that the interest that I was paying on that Barclays card was really high. And when you take cash advances, if you know, the cash advance interest is like really high. So I had a $2,000 limit on this card, but I was like maxing it out even over the limit to almost $2,200, $2,100. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to like tame this bad habit that I've developed. So what I'm going to do is now that I bank with the credit union, I'm actually going to switch all of my banking to the credit union. I'm going to ask for a balance transfer so they can take my Barclays card and I can get a CQ card. That means that the interest is going to be lower and I'm going to have another incentive, like an 18-month or 24-month, some time period where I would be able to focus and pay down a card. Once I got that balance transfer, I was no longer using the Barclays card. So I got a CQ balance transfer. They gave me a limit of $2,000. Now I had this Barclays card. So I was new to credit. So I just thought that the Barclays card was going to go away. I didn't know that now I have 2 credit cards. So because I didn't know that, and now I saw, I was like, oh my gosh, my limit is $4,000. I don't trust myself. What did I do? I cut up the Barclays card, threw it away, never thought about it. Then Barclays started to like contact me saying like, hey, you need to use your card or we're going to cancel the account. Hey, you need to use your card, we're canceling the account. So eventually they canceled the account because I was like, it's not that big of a deal, like cancel the account. Wrong move. So they canceled the account and my credit score like plummeted because that was my oldest line of credit. And because my credit score plummeted, I was just like, oh my goodness, why did I let this card cancel? But I was also still happy because I didn't want to have I didn't trust myself to have another credit card with a $2,000 limit. So then all I had left was the CQ credit card. So when I had my CQ credit card, I was almost nearing the end of my undergraduate career. Luckily, I got a job right after school and I was able to kind of pay down that CQ card. So that MacBook, I kind of paid off the MacBook by this time, but I was just still acquiring more debt on the credit card just like naturally. So I had decided like, okay, let me just pay off everything. I have a job now, I can afford it. So I paid off my credit card and it was at a low balance at that time. However, which is how it usually happens, I decided to go back to school in order to get my dietetics verification, like statement, my internship basically. And during that time period, like that in between time, I really didn't have a source of income. So whenever you don't have a source of income and you have a credit card, that's like the worst thing to do because your credit card essentially is your source of income. Not income, but it's your source of survivalhood in a sense. So I was surviving off that credit card. And during that time, honestly, I wasn't that, towards the end of my undergraduate career, I wasn't the best like bank client. You know, my account would go in negative, I wouldn't care and things like that. And then eventually CQ closed my checkings account. And how you would pay your credit card is through your checkings account. So during that time, after they closed the account, I would have to call in to make a payment on my credit card because I no longer had an account with them. And because I no longer had an account with them, I had to actually call in to actually make the payments, which became frustrating to me because I'm like, what if I forget? Even though I never forgot, I was just like, what if I forget to call? What happens in that case? And I just didn't like that pressure of always needing to just call in order to actually pay the credit card. During this time, I had graduated in like 2016 from undergrad, decided to go back to school in 2017, I believe. So I worked for a year and then I got proposed to in August of 2017. So I didn't have an income because I'm back in school. I didn't have like anything in order to really, like I was doing like side hustle, like I'm always side hustling, but I didn't have like a large income to really help me through this wedding process. I had made the decision that I needed to get another credit card. I was like, I need another credit card because at this point, there's so many things that I need to pay for and I don't have any income, and I know I'm gonna eventually have income because I'm taking my exam, I'm like in my program, I'm gonna have the income eventually, so I'll be good, right? That was my mindset. So I applied for a Capital One card or the Quicksilver card from Capital One, and I was approved for $2,000. And they had the incentive that you spend $600, you get $300 back, and it was already like easy for me to hit that because I had so many wedding expenses that I needed to actually pay for. So I had already maxed out the CQ card at this point because I got out of school. I was in school and I was using that for like school stuff, and then I was also using that for wedding stuff, and then combined that with my new Capital One credit card. So at any given point during like that period, I had about $4,000 in credit card debt because the $2,000 from CQ and then the $2,000 that I had from Capital One. So by the time the wedding had ended, I had acquired $4,000 on the credit card in regards to debt, paying like random stuff and then also paying wedding stuff as well. I had become frustrated in having to call CQ in and make a payment and do this and do that. So I had made the decision that I was going to do another balance transfer. So I was going to balance transfer because once I got married to Sam, I was able to actually go with Navy Federal or get an account with Navy Federal. So I figured Navy Federal has like the best credit cards. I've heard all about them. Was employed. I had a job that was like steady. So I was like, I should be good. They're going to approve me. So I applied for a balance transfer, and even though that wasn't the card that I wanted, it was the card that had the best incentives, if that makes sense, for balance transferring. I would have gotten another card, like maybe a travel card or the cash reward. I don't know. I would have just gotten a different one, but I got just the balance transfer card or something. They gave me a really large limit of about $20,000, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I was so afraid, similar to my past experience. Like, I don't trust myself. Now I have this big credit card. Girl, like, what? So I got the card. I remember getting the card in the mail. I didn't tell anybody. I was like, I have this credit card. I'm so afraid. Like, I don't trust myself. And I just like hid it somewhere in the closet. So the balance transfer was approved. So now at this point I have 3 credit cards. And because I also was working, Capital One had increased my limit by $1,000. So now I was at around $3,000, but I ended up almost hitting that $3,000 mark with the $2,000 that I had just transferred from the CQ to the Navy Federal. So if you're keeping up, at any given point, at the height of my credit card debt, I had about $5,000 in credit card debt. So now let's take it back to 2020. I had already started paying down a lot of my credit cards before like this year started. And I was just really determined because now I had a steady income. The reason why a lot of the times I was acquiring a lot of credit card debt was because I did not have a steady income. I did not have a means to really pay it down. I could really only afford to pay the minimum and not be late. So that's exactly what I did. I paid the minimum and I was not late on that. But now I wanted to really like pay the credit card down and off because I was like, there's no need for me to have this credit card debt if I have a steady income. So I was just throwing money on the credit cards, and then 2020 happened and they put student loans in deferment. This is important because I use that student loan deferment payment. So my student loan payment is about $882. Student loans is the next giant that I'm going to tackle, but that's my minimum payment. So because even though that was my minimum payment, I had applied for an income-based repayment plan, but my plan has always been, even though I'm on income-based repayment, if I can afford to pay the $800, which is the normal amount, let me just pay the $800. So that $800 that I was supposed to be paying monthly was on deferment until September. So I told myself, I'm gonna start the Snowball method using this $800 so that way I could pay off my credit cards. So I would use that $800 and I would throw it. I started with the Capital One because I still had an incentive with the Navy Federal card, meaning that I didn't have interest like acquiring during this time, but I was still making the minimum payment, but I just wasn't focusing on that. So I would take that $800 and I would throw it on the Capital One card, like making big payments, just really trying to knock the card down. And then finally I got that card to a really good amount, or a low amount. I think I paid it off, honestly. I paid that card off, and I never touched the CQ card because I learned from my past mistakes of like not letting the card cancel. So I would use that card when I would like go to the vending machine. I didn't really want to have automatic payments or reoccurring payments on that card because again, I don't like having to call in all the time and not know the balance and not know these things. So I wanted like transactions that I could control and I know that I was putting on that card. So I still had that CQ card. I never really charged it up again. And then I had the Capital One card that I was just paying down. So after making about like 3 payments with the $800, I finally paid that credit card off. And then I just focused my attention on the Navy Federal, still doing that Snowball, like focusing all of that $800 payment to the Navy Federal card, eventually paying that down as well. So my husband and I, when we started 2020, our main goal was really to pay off debt. We had a certain number that we're like, okay, we're paying off this much debt by this end of this year. Honestly, we hit that amount, that debt amount. We've already hit it halfway through, and we're like, oh my gosh, we paid off all this debt. But we were so focused on like paying off like our overall debt because we're really trying to get to this place of being financially whole, that we didn't even notice that we were spending that much. But because we both had steady incomes, it was easy for us to do. So now I can officially say that I am credit card debt free. I am not completely debt free yet. My next tackle is my student loans, and the student loan journey is going to take a little bit more hustling than it would how I did with the credit cards, because if I say this number, I hope you guys don't freak out, but I have about $95,000 in student loan debt. And how I plan on paying that off, like some tips, I've just cut down on expenses that aren't necessary. We only usually eat out on the weekends, and I know if you're doing like any other financial program, you're like, cut it out. But I also think that part of being whole and healthy is like having balance. So we eat out here and there on the weekends, but during COVID, it hasn't really been as prominent. But other than that, also like just learning how to do different skills on my own. So learning how to do my nails on my own, so that way I don't have to pay for that, and just learning other skills that I can acquire. And then honestly focusing on hustling. all my side hustles, building up those streams of income so I can throw that on the student debt. I will probably have a better update once I have the part-time piece that I'm working on right now just in play. But for now, that is my plan, and we are getting financially well together. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. I hope this motivates you. I have a couple spreadsheets that I use. If you're interested in seeing how I monitor our debt, how I pay down, how I budget everything, please just let me know and I'll do a whole video on that. Have a nice day, you guys. Thank you for tuning in.